Can your dog ignore food on the ground out in public without you having to ask them to leave it? Well, yesterday I put out a short that shows John Denver at a grocery store with some trash directly in his path on the ground. And when he sees that trash, he automatically turns up and looks to me. And a lot of you had questions on how to teach it. So today we're gonna be talking all about the auto leave it. Now the auto leave it is when we don't have to ask the dog to leave the thing. They see the thing, ignore it, and redirect to us. So basically what we're saying is the distraction is the cue to engage with the handler. I don't have to monitor my environment because the distraction acts as the cue. Just like a verbal cue tells the dog to do a specific thing, like if I tell a dog to leave it, then they should look up at me, but I don't wanna have to ask my dog to do it, so I teach that the distraction is the cue. And what that does is minimize micromanagement, minimize me having to scan the environment for things I need to tell my dog to leave, and it maximizes desirable decision making for our dogs. So today we're gonna be talking about the entire system of training that leads to a dog that is able to do that. So let's get started. Hi, I'm Laura from Doggy U, and I'm a certified guide dog mobility instructor, service dog trainer, and trick trainer. And y'all had so many questions about how I accomplished the auto leave it that this video is gonna be a little different than my other videos. And that is because typically I write out an entire script or at least a pretty detailed outline on everything that I wanna talk about. But today, this is all of my notes. So we're gonna try and get through this relatively complicated framework for how to train a dog in a way that's really helpful to you. So I'm gonna show you video examples, I'm gonna give you other resources to work on with this, but I'm gonna talk a lot about how I develop a dog that doesn't have to be micromanaged all the time. Now that's not to say that management isn't required, because management is required when your puppy is young and they're just learning. But as they develop into a fully functional service dog, you're going to have to do less and less management of the dog because the environment is actually going to cue the dog to engage with you. So without further ado, let's talk about how I get a dog who's going to look to me and check in with me without me asking when they see something distracting. Well, it starts with them knowing that looking at me is valuable. So we need to start with a simple game that teaches them that engagement with me, looking up at me, redirecting to me is a valuable thing to do. And we start that with offered attention or eye contact games. Now there's several different games that I'm going to play for this. One of my favorite to get started with is the up-down game. And that one is by Leslie McDivitt. She popularized it with her Control on Leash book. She has some really great pattern games there, so definitely check out that book. But it's a really simple game. And the interesting thing is I learned all of these things in guide dog when I was training guide dogs back when I was like 22 years old. I didn't have the know that they were attributed to certain people, so I will do my best to attribute them as they come up. But offered attention, eye contact, that's a concept that's been around for a while. I love the up-down game for that, and that's basically where we're going to put the piece of food on the ground. When the dog looks up at us, we're going to mark and reward and put another piece of food on the ground. So what we're teaching them is they eat the food on the ground, they automatically orient to handler. They eat the food on the ground, they automatically orient to handler. So we're just teaching eye contact. But there's other eye contact games that we can play. So one of those games is I'm going to hold out my cookie to the side. The dog is likely going to look at the cookie. As soon as they look at me, I'm gonna mark and reward with the cookie. So they start learning that I get the thing that I want through watching, looking at my handler. Now we start all these games in front of us, and then we actually have to play them on the side of us because in reality, the dog is going to be in heel position most of the time if you're doing service dog work. So I need to play all of these games in heel position as well. But when we're first starting with a little young puppy, we're gonna start them in front of us. Now those are two structured games that teach the dog that looking at us is valuable, but I also do some offered attention training, which is basically that I'm going to go out once I've played these couple of games with them. I'm going to go out in the world and just like go to a bike path, go to a park, and sit with my puppy and wait for them to look at me. Now, they've already learned from the beginning games that we played with offered attention that going and looking at their human is valuable. So they already have that behavior paid in their repertoire. So when I go out in public, I'm going to start with a place that's like not super distracting, but all I'm gonna do is sit out there with them, and whenever they look at me, I'm gonna mark and reward. I want to tell you from the beginning that I am building so much value, building so much value for looking at handler, engaging with handler. I do not want to have to beg my dog to engage with me, and that means I got to pay a lot of treats in the bank at the beginning for this behavior so that it is within their repertoire. Because people have all sorts of issues, like dogs wanting to go out, like go say hi to other dogs, they want to like eat food off the ground. All of these things can be helped with engagement with eye contact.
Yes, good job. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Now I'll also play these same games with toys. So higher level distraction, especially for John Denver and for a lot of dogs, is you look at me, you get the toy. So we're going to use eye contact throughout the dog's life. And that includes silly things like being able to go outside. I'm gonna have them sit, they look at me, they get to go outside. I'm going to incorporate eye contact into a lot of things that I do. Now that's not to say that they only earn things that they want through eye contact. There's plenty of things that a dog gets for free, but I'm going to use, like, it's a lot easier, say, at the door. If you allow the dog to run out the door every time they go to the door, they're reinforced for running out the door. So instead, if the dog wants to go outside, which they do, obviously not when they like really have to go to the bathroom, whatever, but I'm going to have them sit next to me, they look at me, they get to go outside. Pretty soon they learn, like, oh, when I'm like, and when I want something, if I look at my handler, likely something good will happen. So we're training that. And hey y'all, if you're getting value from this video, I would love it if you could head on down and boop that like button. Doing so positively reinforces me and lets me know that you want more videos like this one, especially since this one was a little bit different style. So let me know. Then we also are going to train clamshell game. So I'm gonna kind of skip out of order here. So clamshell game, or is how I learned it. It's a variant on It's Your Choice by Susan Garrett. So definitely check out her stuff, you know. But clamshell game is when you've got food in your hand, the dog wants the food, especially little puppies. They'll like, this is the dog, this is food in your hand, and they're gonna try and get the food. And as soon as they back off, you're going to open your hand. If it's open long enough, you go in, you mark, you grab the food, you give it to the dog. So you're always taking it out of this hand, giving it to the dog. If they come back in for the food, the hand closes. Nose goes away, hand opens, nose goes in, hand closes. Now the default position is hand open, and then when your hand is open, you feed the dog for doing the thing. So they pretty soon start to learn that if I dive in and try to get the food goes away, and now I'm not pulling my hand away, hand just closes so they can't get to it. And then if I back off, she's gonna open her hand and give me the food. Yes. 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 Good job, buddy. All right, so this is the second session with the same puppy that we were using before for the clamshell game. So I've got 5 cookies in my hand. He's had a break, you know, and now we're gonna try again. So I'm gonna put my cookies in front of the dog's nose. Yes. As soon as he backs off, yes. Reinforcement is available. So see, my hand is open and at his level. Yes. When he doesn't try to get it, I'm going to yes and reward that. Yes. Now I'm going to start asking for eye contact. So I'm going to wait until, yes, he gives me eye contact and reward. Now this puppy obviously has a history of eye contact being rewarded. I don't know this dog at all, but what I did notice is that he was a little, yes, a little bit pushy when I first started working with him. And now I've got some really nice, calm, yes, focus with eye contact. So I'm marking the moment, yes, that he looks at me and rewarding. Now he goes to nose it again. My hand closes as soon as his nose is off. Yes, my hand opens again. Progress that game to eye contact. So I have food in my hand. The dog now learns to back off of the food. And when they're not getting it immediately, they will do the behavior that we've already paid them for, which is to look at me. So they look at me, I mark it with a yes, I reinforce, or a click, whatever, reinforce the dog for that. So they start learning, oh, now she's got a pile of food in her hand, but if I just look at her, she'll just feed me from that hand. Great. Again, they're learning, look at my human, look at engagement when there's a distraction. We're not asking anything. We're trying not to like give her any signals like to make her look at us. We just want her to think of it on her own. Yes. When she does, I mark, take it with my other hand. Yes. Yes. So see how much quicker she's looking at me now?
When she's done chewing.
When she's done chewing. Yes. With her, you're gonna have to be really careful about not starting another rep until she's eaten. Yes.
Okay.
Wow, that was so fabulous. What a fabulous. Then we take that game to the floor, which is a lot harder because the dog thinks that the floor is kind of their domain. They are closest to the floor. So we're gonna play that same game, but all we're gonna do instead is we're just gonna cover it with our hand. They usually whip through this part relatively quickly because they've already understood the hand thing. So you're gonna cover it with your hand if they try to get it. And when they're not trying to get it, you open it, feed them from the pile, feed them from the pile. You start without eye contact. Yes. 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 Good boy. Once they've got the go in and dive for the food, then you wait for the eye contact, feed them for the eye contact. Once you've got the eye contact, now we're gonna start a little bit leveling that up, and we're going to make the food move and be more distracting. So I'm gonna start dropping the food from just an inch off the ground. They're likely going to look at the food when you drop it on the ground, but as soon as they look back at you, you're gonna mark and reward. And pretty soon you'll have a dog that thinks dropping the food on the ground is a cue to look at you for reinforcement. Obviously, you're going to want to start not from waist height when you drop food, but you can start from a little bit lower. And now I've got a dog who just stares at me when food gets dropped instead of trying to dive for it. And then, of course, you're going to have to generalize it extensively. And you can start that generalization with taking a few healing steps. Now again, we're gonna start all of this with food, but then you can also play it with toys or other things that the dog likes to do, like go for a walk. You know, you can have them engage with you to put the leash on, engage with you to go outside, that kind of thing. But we're teaching the framework with food. Plus, it's pretty useful to teach it with food because eventually you're going to want to have the food on the ground and the food that they can't have. So while I'm playing that It's Your Choice game or on like clamshell game on the ground, I will start reinforcing from my treat pouch. Now, you may want to reinforce with something better, like if your dog is struggling with this, or even not, you can like have cheese in your treat pouch and be doing it with kibble on the ground. And so like when you leave the thing on the ground, you get the higher value reinforcement from my treat pouch, which is cheese. And that starts building the behavior that we're eventually going to do, which is you're not going to get the thing on the ground. Like, so I'm never going to pick up a French fry off the ground and feed it to you. Like when you're out and about in public. So I can start doing that system of, okay, here's the distraction over here, and here is the reinforcer from my treat pouch. And you can make that more desirable to them by giving a better reinforcer than what's on the ground. Good. So here's just a little clip of me messing around with Denver with a full rotisserie chicken in that container on the floor and just practicing working around this type of distraction. He is getting rotisserie chicken out of the treat pouch, but sometimes I'll also use a ball because it's a slightly higher value than chicken. So now we've explained in several different ways to the dog that when you see a distraction, looking at your handler is desirable. So now we're gonna move on to engage, disengage game. Now I have an entire video on this. I highly recommend you watch the entire video because it gives a lot of background on how to start the game. But essentially engage, disengage game is where you're going to start with, it was developed more for dogs who are reactive, but it works great for dogs that aren't reactive and keeping them non-reactive too. So it's used a lot with dog stuff, but it works for anything the dog is distracted by. But let's use a dog, for example. So you're at a dog park, great place to train this because the dogs are a captive audience. They're inside of their pen, so you can go as far or as close as you want to and move back and forth, which works out great. So I go to the dog park and my dog is distracted by the dogs. Now, we need to be at a level away from the dogs that my dog is able to hear a click. I use a clicker for this game. People will ask me all the time if you can use a verbal marker. You can. I find that clickers are much more effective because that sound is unique and the dog isn't distracted by listening to what your voice is going to say. The clicker is just, I think it's just better for this game. I'm just gonna say it. I think it's better. So you've got your clicker, your dog looks at the dogs, you click, and the dog looks to you for reinforcement, you reinforce. So you play several rounds of this game where the dog is looking at the distraction, you mark for looking at the distraction, and then you reinforce. You mark for looking at the distraction, and then you reinforce. Part 2 of that game is the dog starts learning, oh, when I look at this distraction, and then my mom clicks and reinforces me, so I should just look at my mom. And so then what you get is a dog who looks at the distraction and then looks up at you. And when you play that game enough, you get a dog that will not look at the distraction and just stares deeply into your soul, which is awesome.
So here's me just placing some food on a little dish to practice with, and he can look at it, and then when he looks back at me, he gets reinforced. And we're going to practice this a lot with a lot of different things that we have placed on the ground. And then eventually the head turn gets smaller until you have a dog that just stares at you. But this is kind of what it might look like at the start of part 2 with a distraction.
So that's like a very brief synopsis of engage, disengage, but you can imagine how it would work well with a dog who might be reactive or distracted or excited by other dogs, because you've got a dog who is looking at the thing. They get to look at it. You're not saying like, don't look at that, don't look at that, don't look at that, because nothing will make me want to look at something more than you telling me I can't look at it, right? So what this game does is it allows the dog to engage in their curiosity, but in a way that doesn't escalate, right? So you can imagine for a dog that struggles with like wanting to go say hi to other dogs, look at other dogs, whatever, you're saying, okay, you can look at them, but the better stuff's up here. Okay, you can look at them, but the better stuff's up here. And that develops this awesome pattern where the dog doesn't escalate in like hard staring, barking, that kind of thing. Anyway, so we're playing engage, disengage games. So we've got all of these things that are basically games that just explain to your dog when you see a distraction, look at me, which is our ultimate goal with our auto leave it. Now we're gonna layer in our reinforcement strategy. So I have an entire deep dive on reinforcement strategy and how I use different cues for how to eat food to provide clarity to the dog, and to set up next reps. When I'm doing a skill, set them up for the next rep of that skill. But I have that over on Patreon. It's the Patreon deep dive on reinforcement cues. Highly recommend you watch it so that you can see the entire scope of this. But what's important about reinforcement strategy is I am going to teach the dog when to eat food off the floor, and it is when I am cueing them to eat the food off the floor. People ask me all the time, oh my gosh, you treat on the floor all the time. Doesn't that make your dog scavenge more? No, it does not make your dog scavenge more. It actually can decrease scavenging because you've built a system that tells them when they should eat the thing off the floor. So I can have a pile, I've done this with like a rotisserie chicken on the floor with Denver, and I can teach him to work around that food, and that sometimes he'll be sent to it and sometimes he'll be rewarded from hand, but just because the thing exists on the floor does not mean they should get it. So you'll see me doing find it, find it, find it. The dog is eating the food off the ground because I've cued them to eat the food off the ground. Same thing with scattering. Like I'll scatter a handful of food. The cue for that is scatter, throw the food on the ground. At the same time, I can practice dropping food. I didn't ask the dog to get that thing. They look to me, and then I can either reinforce my retreat pouch, pick it up and give it to them, whatever I want to do. So reinforcement strategy, explaining to the dog, here's when you do eat something off the ground, when I give you these cues. I'll also do cues like place something behind them, have them do some obedience cues, and then look back, grab the food behind them. Good job, bud. Bring it. So it starts really, really simple though. I'm going to put a piece of food on the ground. Now we've already played these games that told him that when you see food on the ground, you should look at your handler. And then I'm gonna have them do something really, really simple, like have them do a hand touch or a sit or something they know really well. And then I can choose whether I want to send them to the dish on the ground or reinforce them from my hand. But that's gonna start teaching them that like stuff can exist in the environment that I don't pick up. Now I've got a dog that's looking at me all the time. They understand when to eat food on the ground because I have given them the reinforcement strategy to do that, in the same way that you might do for agility, where you're gonna put a toy out and you teach the dog we only go get the toy when you tell them to get the toy, and they may do a series of jumps, tunnels, whatever, and then you send them to their toy. We're doing the same thing with food in that regard. And then the next thing is proofing, all the time, daily. I do it all the time. So one of Denver's favorite ways to eat his breakfast or his dinner, if we're not using it for training, is through a food scatter in the grass. He loves to hunt. He loves to just sniff around and find his stuff. So I know that's something that's very valuable for him. Why not use that every single day to reinforce you don't go get things unless I tell you to? So I will have him sit and I will throw food scatters all over the ground in the grass. And then when he looks up at me, when I'm done throwing the food, he'll look up at me and then I release him to that food. Just another way that I can build that into the daily life, but it can be for anything. We want to practice this daily. I will regularly come down here to this basement. If I'm working on healing, I'm gonna have an open tub of food on the floor. And what happens is it starts to become that when they see that thing, it looks like a training game to them. If I threw a McDonald's wrapper on the floor and that is in part of our training area, then the dog is like, oh, this is a cue that I should engage with my human because that's a distraction. When I engage with her, when I see distractions, something good is going to happen. So it's all about making sure that the dog knows that engagement with me, looking at me, redirecting to me when they see distractions is desirable for them. And I'm gonna build a ton of that up in their little piggy bank of positive experiences. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that it is foolproof and my 1-year-old adolescent male Labrador doesn't ever try to get to things on the ground. But when that does happen, I do have a cue that means redirect to me. Now, people always say, well, that's your leave a cue. Sure, it is your leave a cue, but it's also just his name. So my name for my dog means stop whatever you're doing and look at me. They don't need to come to me, they need to just redirect to me. Well, isn't that what a leave it is? It's stop doing what you were doing and redirect to me. So I don't really spend a lot of time teaching a leave it cue. I did teach it briefly for the CGCA. I think you had to say leave it or something like that. But generally, it's just the name. The name means redirect to me, which I already have. So if I come across something and he looks like he is gonna struggle with it, I can give him his name. He'll redirect to me, and then usually I'll give a hand touch. I like using some type of physical target when we're in a more tricky situation to get them by the thing, especially when they're in adolescence. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of the system of training that I use to get a dog who makes good decisions and sees distractions as a cue to check in with, to engage with the handler without me having to micromanage the dog. And we don't get that same type of excited redirection to handler from correcting them into not taking things on the ground, correcting them for looking at other things, or telling them to leave it a million times, because you'll both get really tired of that. So instead, what we want to do is build value for making desirable decisions. And that's what this strategy does. And yes, you are going to use a lot of food at the beginning, especially for Denver, I just use his regular food, or I use a special kibble, which is just a different type of kibble, as the reinforcer. So I'm doing this with his meals. I'm gonna feed him anyway. I might as well get better behavior from it. As he grows up, as he continues to progress in his training, I can use other types of reinforcers. There's lots of things that a dog enjoys. You can play with them, personal play, or if you're out in public and you can't, whip out a toy or do sillies with them, you can do things like a hand touch. Denver loves to do a hand touch as a reinforcer, or, getting to move forward. I used to train guide dogs for a decade, German Shepherd guide dogs. So pulling into harness, getting to move forward, incredibly reinforcing. So leaving the thing and getting to move on, that's reinforcing in itself. So you can get creative on how we can reinforce this engagement with our dogs. But this is generally how I get it done. And it's just practicing it day after day after day. Just 1 to 2 minutes of consistency a day with this will yield so much better results than just doing it once a week. So be sure to proof daily, practice daily, and make it super fun with your dog, and you'll get that same behavior of the dog seeing the thing on the ground or seeing that distraction and using it as a cue to engage with you. All right, y'all, I hope you enjoyed that video. Like I said, I have a ton of these resources more in depth for you. Engage, Disengage is on YouTube if you just search Doggy U Engage, Disengage, or I'll link it down in the comments. I have tons of examples of this stuff over on Patreon. It's only $4 to join at the Doggy U crew level. You'll see offer potential games, you'll see eye contact games, you'll see clamshell game, you'll see, the variants on clamshell game with different dogs. So definitely check that out. I have that deep dive over there for Inner Circle members on reinforcement strategy as well. So patreon.com/doggyu. And if you like this video, you're definitely gonna like this one too. So you should click on it now. You all have an awesome day and happy training.